This section is going to be rather short because it is a non-clinical assessment companion to the clinical assessment component that I recorded right before. If it's been a little bit since you looked at the previous clinical programming presentation, a quick reminder about how we look at prescribing exercise, and that's by POEM, which is Problem-Oriented Exercise Management. The steps to determine what the problems are first of all to get the subjective data, then collect data by assessments such as exercise tests, clinical or field. The assessment involves the evaluation of both the subjective and the objective data. And a reminder, subjective data is history, anything that the client tells you about their signs, symptoms, etc. Could be the PAR-Q, okay? And so you take a look at subjective information, objective information, and you make a list of what kind of problems the person has, whether it be poor flexibility, poor cardiovascular fitness, body composition, so we're looking at our health components, or we could be evaluating performance if we're not looking at individuals that have a disease, right? Okay. The plan is a way to get to the action plan is going to be the steps to get an improvement in the problem. Getting the subjective information, you're assessing the current health, what kind of physical activity that they're doing, and what kind of exertional symptoms that are going to place a limit on a person's ability to participate in exercise. If exercise testing is needed and there is no indication of clinical assessments necessary, then you have a little bit of a different setup. So if with an individual that is the general population, we've got a number of field tests that we can do. If we're looking at individuals that have a disease process or are limited for a variety of reasons, which we're going to talk about as we have individual presentations throughout the semester, then there are function tests that are available. And the functional tests are either going to be evaluating a person's endurance, a person's strength, but it's going to be specific tests that are have norms and standards and classifications for often aging population or individuals with a specific disease. So the functional test that you looked at in the and answer questions, those are all listed. I don't think the arm curl test was listed. An arm curl test is looking at the strength of the bicep, and that could be not a max test, but utilizing a known weight and looking at how many repetitions a person can do. So timed up and go test can be called timed up and go, or a tug test, or a get up and go. So it's got numerous names. Let's see here. The dynamic gait index, I will put this out for you so you can take a look at it, but this is a nice way of evaluating a person's walk. And then there's a 4-stage balance test. The 4-stage balance test will be linked in the same module. You can take a look at it. It's about 2 minutes, but briefly, it only takes a stopwatch. You ask the person, you demonstrate and ask the person to stand in 4 different positions and demonstrate it and ask them, tell them that the target is 10 seconds. They first stand with their feet next to each other, so side by side. Their arms can be at their side or out a little bit to maintain their balance. Once they get past 10 seconds, they can put their foot, they can relax. Then the feet are together with the heel at the instep, or move one foot slightly forward so the heel is at the instep. Again, ask them to stand up to 10 seconds and then you are good. If they can't make it for 10 seconds, you document how many seconds they can do it. Then finally, the tandem, which is toe to heel. that is the heel to toe, and you can have the person, they have their arms down or to the side, and the goal is 10 seconds again. And finally, a single leg or a stork when you stand on one leg by itself. Now, the person who cannot do a tandem for 10 seconds, or either the feet side by side or feet together, heel at the instep for 10 seconds, is at a greater risk of falling. This is the CATS Index of Independence, and you'll see that there is a list of activities that are based upon needing help or not needing help, with a descriptor with each. So those assessments of independence are often best for using in elderly care home or with elderly individuals. The walking speed test is a test that is going to predict a person's dependency as well. And this one, you already watched the video, and you can see that if somebody, based upon how fast their speed is, that the faster they can walk, the more likely they're independent, less likely to be hospitalized, less likely to have an adverse reaction, and they can cross, they're discharged DC, discharged to home more likely. And the A is, once you do all of your assessments, you look at what limits are going to pose a problem for that person's physical function. You're going to look at what kind of safety measures are needed, consider what the person likes, make sure that the person understands what their symptomology is, what's normal and what's abnormal, and then consider what is going to be the location where a person is going to be more likely to participate. So some individuals are more likely to do things at home, in their home. Other people are more likely to be involved with groups, and so that's important to recognize. You want to develop the program. This goes the same way as what it did for the clinical, long-term and short-term goals, and take into consideration what somebody's medication would be, and that's Appendix A. If there are any kind of influence on heart rate, EKG, blood pressure, cardiac output, so that helps you to know. That's real important to understand what impact the medications have on not just the cardiovascular, but also on the entire system. Some medications might cause dizziness, lightheadedness until a person gets acclimated, so that's important. The client should understand the risks and benefits of exercise, and that is just part of it, right? Understanding why it's good is part of it. And then determining, what are you going to monitor? Are we going to monitor frequency of participation and what they did? Is it helpful to monitor some clinical responses? And that could be a blood pressure response, blood glucose response, heart rate response, and also how are you going to monitor fitness? And that could be associated with being able to perform their normal activities, or you might want to reassess their fitness tests that were done in the beginning.